Explain to me, Sean, like how did you start this company? But it started from this honoring of a very close best friend that you guys adventured.
Yeah. So I guess the zoom out on this would be, we've all had best friends, and we also have had friends who've been very close with us for different chapters. And the older I get, I kind of recognize that. But there's also these friends that are these consistent themes that actually transcend into family. Mm-hmm. Friends are family. The right friends are family. And my brother, my sister, and I, we all have our versions of that. And Glenn was that. Glenn became family. So we met in middle school. We really hit it off, kind of like leaving junior high into high school. We were all part of this extended group of friends. My older brother, a handful of guys that, we're all these kind of semi-misfits out of Winchester, Massachusetts, where we all went to high school together. And Glenn and I just saw the world in a very similar light. We were both middle children, older brother, younger sister. Like our family dynamics were very similar that way. Divorced parents, raised by our moms. Like we had a lot of that in common. And then when you're that middle child, like, you're a little bit of a showman. You're a little bit of, you're kind of vying for that family attention, not always in a good way. So there can be a little bit of that black sheep element. We both had it, but we're also very performative. So willing to help others, going out there and extending yourself, maybe past where you should be even. But Glenn was that guy. So the common expression is that Glenn was best friends to everyone who knew him. Like if you knew Glenn, cool. Dude, he was your best friend. And that takes a lot of effort. Glenn put in so much effort to stay super connected to those that he loved. Yeah. And he loved hundreds of people. And he was willing to tell them that. So we leave high school. Glenn spends 2 summers touring with the Grateful Dead. Literally making peanut butter sandwiches with my brother, touring the Grateful Dead. We decided to drop out of college together. We go ski bumming in Utah. Glenn's like, I want to become a pro skier, next adventure. I'm like, I want to become a pro snowboarder, my next adventure. Horrifying our parents with this. And then we're out in Utah and living in the mountain lifestyle for 5 years. And then we're regrouping again. We're roommates during this time. And then he's working odd jobs. He's a river raft guide. He's working as a ranch hand. We're painting houses, you name it. It was all over the place, but adventure everywhere. Well, we're turning 25 and all of our friends had gotten real jobs. Most everyone from our high school had graduated. Half of them were married. Everyone's on their path to, investment banking or lawyers or whatever you do. And Glenn and I are a couple of ski bums. I got really lucky. I made it as a professional snowboarder, a sponsored snowboarder, kind of like a low level pro snowboarder, but it paid the rent. So I was getting paid to snowboard. So I was like, hey man, I've made it. And Glenn never made it as a pro skier. And he was a hell of an athlete. Everyone loved him. He was the most popular guy around snowbird, but he didn't quite make it as a pro skier. So he's like, all right, my next adventure in life, I'm going to join the Navy and become a Navy SEAL. And this is 1994, 95. There was a Charlie Sheen movie that we rented at Blockbuster on VHS to learn about what a Navy SEAL is, driving a truck off the Coronado Bridge or whatever that was. That was the knowledge we had of it. But Glenn got it in his head that he was going to do that as his next adventure, that next challenge, that next opportunity to see what you're made of. This is in his 20s. What am I made of? This was me describing snowboarding earlier. What are you made of? And you're testing yourself and you're pushing yourself to these boundary edges. And that was very much in Glenn. I have had my taste of that from the adventure sport side. And hey, bonus if you get to serve your country too. Mm-hmm. A year later, I'm at his BUBS graduation.
Wow.
So dude does it, goes into basic training. I drove him to the recruiter in Utah. And then, next thing I know, I'm in Coronado watching him get pinned. And then he serves 10 years down at SEAL Team 3. He's living down in Coronado. And then I end up getting a job. So when I got done snowboarding, I graduated from college. I used my snowboard money to pay for my degree. I went back to school when I was 25. I get a degree and I end up getting recruited from Burton Snowboards. So one of the big snowboard brands. And they had this young kid named Sean White. Sean White was living in Carlsbad. And they're like, okay.
Big redhead.
And he was 16 years old at the time. Didn't have a driver's license. So I was hired as his team manager, moved to San Diego, and then my best buddy's down in Coronado. So I take this dream job with Burton Snowboards. I'm still traveling the world. I'm having all these great adventures. and my best buddy's down here, and so we get the band back together, and now the boys are back. So we're hanging out together, and then Glenn buys a house up in Encinitas, which was the town I was living in. Fast forward a couple of years for two dudes that are divorced, turning like in our late 30s, figuring out what the hell we're going to do with our lives. And we both discovered CrossFit together. Glenn actually found it on a deployment and brought it home with him. We're doing CrossFit at the Encinitas YMCA. That leads us to this whole journey into the only CrossFit gym around, which was called US CrossFit or SEALFit. It's owned by another SEAL. So like we had to go to the SEAL gym because my buddy's the SEAL. And all these adventures ensued. Like here we are turning 40 and adventure was the word. And it was incredibly fun. That was a chapter. I met my wife, Heather. Like it was just nonstop. It was a kind of energy in your 40s in late 30s and 40s that I didn't know was possible until he was killed. So that transition, so when Glenn got out of the Navy, he was contracting for the Central Intelligence Agency. So he was providing security intelligence details and traveling all over the world. He was in like Mexico City. He'd be over in Yemen. He would be in Iraq, wherever the CIA needed him. And he would do these deployments where he'd be gone for 4 months, back for 4 months, gone for 6 months, back for 6 months. Like it was always these cycle travels. And his last deployment was in the end of August, September of 2012. And he was stationed in Tripoli. So Gaddafi had just gotten ousted from power in Libya, and Glenn went in to help kind of secure whatever the U.S. assets were at the time. And we never really talked about that stuff. We'd been roommates the last 3 years that he was alive. Again, two dudes getting divorces, so like we needed to huddle up and pool our resources. But Glenn was one of the SEALs that responded to the terror attacks in Benghazi, Libya. So if you ever saw the movie 13 Hours.
Yeah, is that the same time that Jocko talks about when he was in Benghazi?
I don't know about Jocko's time in Benghazi. I've actually never talked to him about that at all. Okay. But the incident in Benghazi where we lost, the ambassador, Chris Stevens, there was an intelligence guy or an IT officer who was killed over there, and another SEAL, Tyrone Woods. I believe Jocko and Tyrone knew each other quite well. But Glenn was in Tripoli, so he was like a 2-hour flight away. So he flew in to help provide extra security and help all the Americans who were huddled up in Benghazi after the terror attack happened. So Glenn ended up being killed on that rooftop in Benghazi while providing cover and saving everyone, and allowing them the time to be able to get out of there. And I was the executor of Glenn's estate, and I was his listed next of kin on his paperwork. So it was on the anniversary of 9/11. So it was in the 9/11 of 2012. And Glenn was killed the morning of the 12th. And, I got the phone call to kind of like share that news, like, hey, your best friend's been killed. That was a really huge life transition for me because I lost a brother in that moment. And Glenn and I had purposefully set up our lives like to take care of each other's shit, so to speak. So that's why I was the executor of his estate. Like I was in charge of his will and all of that stuff. And he was in charge of all mine. Like the running joke was who's going to die first. And I was convinced it was going to be me because I was far more reckless than Glenn was. Yep. Turns out it was Glenn. And so the opportunity to serve for me was pretty immediate. How do you deal with legacy? How do you deal with death? How do you deal with mourning? And you've got hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people from different walks of life looking to you to be the person to help steer them through their grief. They were friends from Winchester that we grew up with. They were all the ski bum friends out of Utah. They were the military friends that Glenn had served with. There was the CrossFit community in San Diego, which Glenn was friends with, tons and tons of people. And so I immediately went into this kind of mode of celebrating Glenn's legacy. It was big parades. It was like paddle outs. It was celebratory things. It was starting the foundation, the Glenn Doherty Memorial Foundation, being a part of that engine to lift it up, to keep Glenn's memory alive and to keep him at the table. And the BUBS Naturals brand was really, it was actually 5 years later. I was thinking about charitable giving and institutionalizing charitable giving. I had seen something on Amazon where you could like round up to a charity. So like if your purchase was like $5.50, you could round up to $6. And I was like, how do you do that? How do you like institutionalize it? Wouldn't it be cool if a brand just baked charitable giving into its mission? And it was like just a conversation because I was thinking about the Glenn Doherty Foundation. I wasn't thinking about a brand. Now, about that same time, my wife bought me a jar of collagen. She brought it home from the news story. She's like, oh, I interviewed someone and they said this is supposed to be really good for your joints. And she's like, oh, it's also good for hair, skin, and nails, but like your muscle recovery and joints. Now, I had a 1-year-old son at the time. I was really slowing down in the gym. Like I was noticeably achy. My wife famously said, when she got me the jar, she's like, I need to preserve you in your old age because your knees sound like crinkled up newspaper when you walk up and down a flight of stairs. Yeah. I'm like, okay, like, yeah, I want to be the active parent. I want to be, engaged. I don't want to be sore all the time. So I'd never taken any supplements. The only knowledge I had around nutrition was from Glenn. And, he had his little mason jars of the things that he took. And it was like, this is the no explode. We use that when we're going to do a heavy CrossFit workout. This is the whey protein. We use that for lifting days. This is the electrolytes and the hydration stuff. We do that when we're going on a bike ride. And this is Metamucil because you got to stay regular. Like no shit. He had his jars out. So
dude, this is such an awesome, just like bachelor pad, just like list of supplements with like a piece of tape written in like some sort of broken pen.
Yeah. Well, the kicker is that he actually never wrote them on there. He just knew what was in each jar.
So sometimes you screwed it up.
So the famous one was when I screwed up a jar of Metamucil and I threw that in thinking that it was my lifting powder. Yeah. And chugged it down and made it to the gym. And I'm like,
Houston, we got a problem.
I gotta go.
That's awesome.
So my wife introduced me to collagen and I just start taking it. I'm just throwing a scoop in my coffee. That's what she tells me to do. 2 weeks goes by, my fingernails are growing like I'm the Wolverine. I'm like, what the hell is happening? Like I don't take anything and all of a sudden this thing is happening where like I can see something happening. And then I needed a haircut like 2 weeks later. So I'm a month into this and I've got these two things happening that are different. And it was about the 2 month mark when my knees stopped hurting. And my knees, just from all the impact sports stuff, like that was my source of pain. It wasn't my shoulders or my elbows. It was screaming knees. And dude, it just got so much better. It felt like they just didn't hurt. Like out of the blue, I'm like, whoa. But really it took 2 months of taking the product, of taking collagen before I recognized like, oh, this is doing something for me. And then I got really curious. What's in this stuff? Now I'm in my 40s now. Like we're eating clean. We're on the Mediterranean diet. We're very balanced on our proteins, carbs, leafy greens. Like I married a marathoner. Like she's the definition of clean eating and clean living. So like we can feed off of each other for good nutrition. And it's awesome. When she introduced me to this product, it changed my life. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden I'm back in the gym. All of a sudden I'm back squatting more than I had been. All of a sudden, like I just feel better. And if you feel better, you can have the energy to do more volume of work.
Totally.